I was on vacation with my family in Europe. However, the last few days were a bit tense, mainly because my dad, 64, kept losing things, mostly glasses, which meant we had to keep buying those cheap €2 reading specs. But at our final destination, Paris, he lost his backpack. He left it on a bench and forgot about it. By the time he remembered, it was gone. Due to this and other circumstances, those final days were stressful, and we were all just eager to get back home. On our flight home, from Paris to Bogota, we took our seats and everything seemed normal. We were all seated in the same row. I had the aisle seat, while my parents and sister sat together in the row right next to me. The takeoff went smoothly, but the trouble began when a French Karen, approximately 40 years old, started kicking the back of my seat. My dad, who was sitting across the aisle right next to me, noticed this and suggested we switch seats, but I wouldn't let him. He's a senior citizen with lower back issues, and on top of that, he's an extremely calm, non-confrontational person.
So I retaliated by abruptly straightening my seat and then slamming it back as far as it would go. Apparently, the Karen didn't like that very much because she started poking me in the shoulder. However, I ignored her completely. I didn't even turn around to look at her. In my mind, it made no sense to engage. No matter what she might say, nothing justified kicking my seat. This seemed to annoy her even more, so she went running off to find a flight attendant. The flight remained quiet for a few minutes, but when the flight attendant finally approached, I explained what was happening. To my surprise, he tried to imply that I was the problem for reclining my seat too fast and reclining it too far. I simply told him, in that case, I won't be held responsible. A few minutes later, the Karen started kicking the back of my seat again. This time, fed up, I spun around and started screaming at her to stop. Whenever she tried to justify her actions, I just screamed back, "No!" That finally got everyone's attention, of the flight attendants, who finally spoke to her, and the woman stopped.
However, I think she stopped more out of embarrassment for having drawn negative attention to herself, since I don't think she expected me to react that way. I know that in those countries, people don't like making a scene or drawing attention to themselves, but I wasn't about to let this woman walk all over me. I don't want opinions on whether I was right or wrong. I simply wanted to share a story time. Edit, now that I'm home and rested, I will add to the post more info. So my dad, who had the side view of what happened, told me French Karen was apparently reading and had Hugh book kind of forward, so when I reclined my seat, I pushed her book towards her, and that what got her mad, and she started pushing my seat, not kicking. When that happened, I straightened my seat and proceeded to yank it, recline it, and then the whole story. And yes, apparently she went to flight attendant trying to get me to not recline my seat. I didn't hear her, but my father did. Also, when we landed, my father stepped up behind me so she couldn't touch me, and he told me she ended up elbowing him 3 times and also pushed her face against him, but he ignored her. I didn't notice this because I was unloading the luggage. Had I noticed this, I think hands would have been thrown.
The first time I genuinely fell for someone, I still chose not to make a move. I've had around 6 relationships in the past, but what I felt for her was different. For the first time in my life, I thought she deserves someone better than me. Because of my poor academics, I decided to turn my life around and joined a reading room. I had been disrespected so much that only one thought remained in my mind. I must win. I became like a living corpse. Wake up at 6 a.m., reading room. Come back at 9 p.m., sleep, repeat. I ghosted all my friends, put my phone away, and didn't want to talk to anyone until I succeeded. I was insanely disciplined. No unnecessary conversations, no friend circle. I didn't even know the person sitting next to me. Then, in February, a new girl joined the reading room. She was there for just a month, but she was just as disciplined as me. Slowly, it became routine. We both showed up at 6 a.m. every day. One day, we started talking, and we talked for 3 hours straight. She was the warmest person I had ever met. We were the same age. She was already a gazetted level officer, preparing for UPSC. I didn't even have a degree, but she never showed any ego. You could literally feel the warmth in her presence. She was introverted, but once she started talking, she wouldn't stop, and I loved that. I've dated many girls, but for the first time in my life, I didn't just like someone, I admired her. We only spoke 5 to 6 times because I didn't want to disturb her focus, but every conversation we had was deep. We were living on completely opposite ends of life. She had never gone out much. Strict parents, one relationship, never smoked, and never drank. I was the complete opposite. She got posted in another city, and she was leaving in Feb. On her last day, we had a small conversation. I'm really bad at goodbyes. Since her dream is UPSC, I gifted her a Lakshmikant book. Yeah, a bit cringe, but still. That day, we talked deeply again. Until that moment, we had never exchanged numbers or Instagram. I knew if I didn't ask then, I would probably never see her again. But I chose not to ask. I felt her journey would be better without me. She deserved someone better. She said goodbye and started walking away. After a few steps, she turned back. I smiled and waved. She smiled back and walked away. And just like that, she faded out of my life. I hope she achieves everything she dreams of. I do have her number from the reading room group, but I've never texted her. Now, I'm preparing for UPSC 2, hoping that one day we might meet again. But this time, we'll be standing at the same level.